One of the people who really got me thinking about hosting this was Jackie, and we've had a number of discussions over the years where we've talked a lot about both our successes and our failures in regards to all sorts of issues. And we had a great conversation at USC on this subject, and I think as someone who has really created a program essentially out of the air and led it to incredible success, I know I've learned a lot about being a director since the first Seat of Business meeting that I attended, where Jackie explained how he started OU Debate, and since then. And I imagine he has some interesting things to say.
Yeah, I guess I can start with kind of my favorite story, and I think that, if you were to ask me, like, what's our issue? And I think for me, I think our first issue, and I'll tell my story and so you can kind of understand it. We were at a tournament a couple of years ago, and I had two white debaters, and they were going to debate a Louisville team. And we look at the judge, or no, we were debating a Towson team, and we had a Louisville judge, okay? And so we look at the pairing, and we're like, oh man, we got a Louisville judge against two black debaters, and I got my two white debaters. And for some reason, we thought that was unfair. And and I'm not going to be the only one that says this, but a lot of people out there probably think that same thing. And at that point, I realized how absurd we are with the way in which we view debate. I went to the room, and the Louisville judge wasn't black. The judge was white. And so I was wrong in all different kinds of directions. But the one thing that I found out is, in our community, I think one of the problems is we got to stay implicated. We got to constantly keep testing ourselves and finding out, what do we do that causes things to continue the way they are? What do you do that constantly keeps debate more in the pristine white adamant that we keep? And so for me, that was kind of one eye-opening experience for me, because I realized that, wow, most debates, when there are, black debaters that show up and then they debate white debaters, they do have a white judge. But we see that as fair. And why do we see that as fair? Because we've gotten accustomed to it. And so I think that, before we can fix any of these things, we also have to figure out that we are responsible. It's not whoever created debate back in 1953 and said, let's have the NDT. They're not responsible for what we do right now. We are responsible for what we do. And so I think that the first step is we got to kind of, I got to constantly tell myself, I do some racist shit, and I got to admit to it, and I got to face up to it. And my debaters make sure that I face up to it sometimes. But that's kind of how that's how we have to go about if we really want to address the problem. Because who wants to bring students into a broken place? Who wants to bring students into a place where they will get tortured? Where they will get broken? And so, for me, that was kind of one of the first, that was a big eye-opening event for me. I started out, I guess, at Vermont with Tuna when we did the Urban Debate Leagues in New York. And I went to the tournaments there, and my experience at the tournaments wasn't as much about debate as it was checking out the schools. And as I walked around in the schools and looked at the books, I realized that there's a problem here. There's such an educational variance between what some people get taught and what others get taught that, it really isn't fair. It really isn't fair. And so, from that point, I kind of found an interest in how do we kind of try to level the playing field. Even though I'm not for sure it can be level, but at least we can try to make it more level, in a sense. And so, I started the program at OU, and that's one thing that I was pretty much committed to, is I did not want to have an all-white male debate team. And and sometimes we're definitely more male than we are female right now, and that's a problem we definitely have to fix at OU. And I'm willing to admit that, though, and I'm willing to admit that I don't like driving around when we don't have other diverse perspectives with what we're doing as a group, as a debate team. And so I wanted to, I guess, a couple other dilemmas that I kind of wanted to share with you as coaches. And a couple of things I want to say is I remember that when Louisville had their the three-tiered process, and I judged a lot of debates back when I used to judge debates. And I judged a lot of debates, and I remember so many counter plans these brilliant people in debate would come up with. Oh, more scholarships for Urban Debate League people. Oh, we should do more all these different ideas. But did they pan out? Did all of you that found your counter plan against Louisville 10 years ago, did you work that out? Did you follow through, or was it just a debate argument? And I kind of challenge all of you on that made those we could do X, to kind of continue to do X. But I kind of ran into a problem myself. The first couple of years at OU, I did recruit 2 kids from the Kansas City Urban Debate League. And I brought them to OU, and first semester, it was hard, being a white coach with 2 black debaters. At what point do I question them? At what point do I say, are you lying to me or are you not lying to me? And that's a big issue because sometimes people don't want to admit, hey, I'm really not doing well in school and I need some help. And how do you relate to that? And so at first I was like, man, I don't want to bring kids into OU and set them up for failure. I don't want them to come to OU and go to school for a semester and then fail out and have huge financial aid, have loans and not be able to go back to school. What do I do about that? What do I do? And you definitely got to have you got to have a plan. You got to figure out what am I going to do about that. And so for a while that plagued me for a couple of years because I was really like, man, I don't want to bring another Jeffrey Stone in here and him fell out of school and never have another chance in his life to go back to school. I don't want to do that. But then I had another experience. And there is no right answer. I had another experience. I go to Oakland and I take my kids to the Cal tournament. And they go to Rashid's house with his grandma and with his mom. And they don't want him to go outside. And I think while we were there were 8 people shot in Rashid's neighborhood that weekend. And I meet with another kid that's like, I want to go to OU to debate. I want to get out of Oakland. And so then it's like, hold it. So now I'm like, I don't want you to fail. But then I'm like, but you want to get out so you don't get shot. And there's something to that. There's something to that. But as a coach with my debaters, it's if you want to be inclusive, you have to make room for difference. You have to get rid of all of those views of what you think a debate squad meeting looks like, of what you think specific debate practice is supposed to look like, and you've got to reevaluate how you go through this process. Because we only have it set up for one culture. We haven't investigated how do we make this more accessible for other people that don't necessarily like country music or blues or rock and roll, And it's like we need to figure out how to make space. But my view is, you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan, but you got to do something. It's like I've never really been to a TOC tournament to recruit, but I've been to some Urban Debate League tournaments. I've went to some of those camps, and that's where, that's kind of where I want to kind of reach out to find some opportunities, I guess. And then the other side is, as a coach, I like to win, and I like to tap into the resources that allow me to win, and I feel like there's a lot there that a lot of people are kind of not giving a lot of attention to. And so, I don't know if I said anything nice or right or wrong, but at the same time, I think that it takes a commitment. And it's not something that's just going to happen, and it takes some planning. And it's not something that's just going to all turn out great. It's going to be bad. There's going to be some bad parts of it. When you're at a tournament and you take students to a tournament, nothing against my debaters, but almost every tournament, either somebody goes to jail, somebody gets shot, or somebody, something happens to somebody in their local, their family or their local neighborhood every weekend. And I know when I went through the debate, I was so privileged. I never had an issue like that. I never got a phone call. It's like my cousin got shot, or my mom went to jail. I never got that, And we see debate and we go through debate as though it's just the research, do the cards, and there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it. And so I could talk forever, but I'm not going to say anything else. People have questions for me. That's good. But, the main thing is it takes some planning. You know, it takes some planning, and at the same time, like, you have to do something, kind of like what Gabe said. And so,
Could I ask you to speak about one other thing, Jackie? One thing that I've found as a coach, in a lot of ways that kind of, I think, makes or breaks my role and as a teacher with my students is trust. And one of the ways I've dealt with it is to say to each of my students, you can trust me to tell you when you're terrible. And you can trust that you can tell me when I'm terrible. And that works on a certain kind of intellectual level with argument, but trust seems to be a really essential part of building team culture. I would like to be able to say that my students trust me as much as I trust them, and that we trust each other with our lives, and that we do and we have. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
well, I guess
That issue.
I've, you know, my first thought when I met Rashid in Oakland, you know, my first thought is I don't expect my debaters to trust me, to be quite honest. At least not mine, not from the backgrounds that a lot of my debaters come from. You know, that's just something that you really do have to earn. And a lot of coaches don't want to go through the process of earning trust of students. They think, I'm the coach, you're supposed to trust me, what I say goes, let's have it that way. And I think that you've got to, I mean, for me, I approach more the situation of I don't expect them to trust me. You know, that's something that I think I have to earn. I think society's kind of hedged against me on that. You know, and just the way in which our social system's set up, that I shouldn't be trusted.
So what's your strategy for that? So one of the ways I tried to set up the question was to say, I really try to sort of expose myself to the same kind of criticism that I put myself through. I really am a relentless self-critic, I think, to a fault sometimes, and I really encourage the debaters to let me know when I'm sort of screwing up. That's one strategy I've used, and so I wonder if you can think of some strategies or some.
Well, I think it's, like for me, I guess if I were to say, how did I actually get kids from the Houston Urban Debate League, Kansas City, Baltimore, the Bay Area Urban Debate League on my team, I think I think that's kind of what you're asking. And I think it comes back to my experience that, you know, when people see debate, what do they see? I know that when I worked at the different camps, when I was at Vermont, we would bring students in from Providence and New York. Whenever you would see, like, we would have other kids from the camp that would be there, and they would be like trying to show off and reading their blocks really fast. And I realized that, you know, a lot of students, young students, aren't going to come up to you and go, hey, Fitzmyer, I can't read, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? And if you say this is what debate is, and your exposure to what debate is something that they can never find interest in or find any way to access, then you're probably not going to get very far. And I think that my approach more is, how do you like to talk about stuff? And we should do it your way, you know, and allow you to kind of take the way in which you like to communicate and bring that into debate, rather than me changing the way that you debate to fit into debate. And I think that that's kind of, you know, I realize that there's a lot of students that want to debate, that they get exposed to debate and they're like, I have to read fast like that. They're like, I have a hard time reading as it is. It's not that they couldn't debate though, it's they couldn't debate that way. And I think that that's kind of the difference, is the exposure to people that you don't have to debate that way. That debate is what you make it. Debate is what you stand up and say, I'm going to debate and this is what debate will be, rather than somebody else telling you, no, this is debate, how debate has to be, and you have to fit into that box. And so I think that that's kind of that's kind of the bigger issue. I don't think that I don't think that the 4 black guys that I brought to this tournament would be on my team if I made them read plans and economy disads and hegemony good. I wouldn't debate either if I was them. And I think that as coaches, we've got to open up our diverse knowledge of ways in which people can access debate for that to really work.
Thanks, Jackie.